Ramo, thank you. Thank you very much for those wonderful remarks. A little personal story about kind of people coming together. Tuan and I live about a half a kilometer apart in Boston. In one of the kind of the great ironies, the Special Forces camp that I was at in the latter part of my tour was a half a kilometer from Tuan's family house. After the war, they dug up our compound, of course, and turned it into agricultural land. And Tuan would go there after school and plant vegetables. And there was a real food shortage in Vietnam at the time, so at least that camp turned out to provide some benefit to the Vietnamese people. So Ramo, thank you so much. Terrific remarks. Another good friend of the Boston Global Forum is up next. Zlatko, you heard from Zlatko Lagumdzija yesterday. He's the former Prime Minister of Bosnia, Herzegovina. Zlatko, are you?
Well, I do see you, I do hear you, Houston. I don't have a problem in here. Do you have a problem there in Boston?
We can see you.
Hearing me?
And hear you.
Excellent. So thank you so much. It was really honor and privilege. I mean, for yesterday to be part of this gathering. And I think it's a great blend that we spoke yesterday about the future. We talked about manifesto of our AIWS, about actions to create age of global enlightenment. And I think today it's a great opportunity to remind ourselves about great people whose legacy is very good lighthouse for our future. Sometimes I'm thinking, I was listening to my dear friends about Shinzo Abe's legacy, and now when after this introduction by Peter given by basically speaking by a movie that Tuan gave us to, of course, and Thomas, I mean, your introduction about Boban Kiet, especially the words that, I mean, it's hard to speak after Ramu. And next time, Tuan, when you put me in a program, please don't put me up to Ramu, because it's hard, you know, it's hard to play a ball after Messi, if you see the Messi, so you don't go every day. Everyone is not Saudi Arabia to just kick out Argentina. So sometimes we have to be careful about how you are structuring it. But anyway, let me go to the few points that I wanted to share with you, especially in context of reconciliation, because I'm coming from the part of the world where the word reconciliation is very important one. And I think that I've just say a few facts that I learned about you know, Boban Kiet. But I will give you a few lessons that I learned from the legacy that I think may be relevant for the future, especially if we want to really enter into age which we call enlightenment age. I found out, I mean, that Bo was really leading Vietnam economic reforms, and we know that from 90s, and it was reopening to outside world after decades of isolation. That's something which itself is a great issue. He was a well-regarded Vietnamese revolutionary and political leader, a revolutionary veteran fighting in the long war against the French colonialism and then South Vietnamese and American forces in South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. We know about him as someone who is in difficult years following the war, was one of the most prominent political leaders that led the innovation policy in Vietnam, Joy Moi. I hope I didn't pronounce that bad, so you know what I'm talking about, innovation and reforms. I mean, can you imagine that at that time, someone was coming from hardcore communist country, was leading the country to join ASEAN and, you know, normalize relations with the US just 20 years after that war. So I think that you know, when we talk about his economy and about what he did in an economic sense, we have to understand that he inherited, he tried to change not some old-fashioned system, but he tried to change harsh Stalinist politics efficiency that was tried to show it is possible by central government. In that ideological context, in that post-war situation, where Stalin was still alive, 30 years after his death in Vietnam, I mean, we had the reformers who was really trying to crash that model and open the world. Can you imagine that we have people like him today, and people like Abre and his Abenomics? If we could combine those people with Vint Cerf, people-centered economy, what we heard yesterday from Sandy Peterson. I mean, can you imagine that we have leaders who are really running the countries and are able and capable of reforming the real world in toughest situations? So I think that, when you say that he brought in foreign investment law, what is foreign investment law from today's perspective? But when you put it in that context, it was like heresy. It was like Martin Luther King, doing the reforms in that time. And not Martin Luther King, but even Martin Luther back in medieval Europe when he was reforming the church at that time. So I think just to talk, when we put him in that context, I think it is something which deserves extraordinary award. So let me put it this way. About 30 years ago, so less than 30 years ago, when the Dayton Peace Accord was brought, I was not happy about the way the peace was brought in. A lot of injustice was brought with it. Some complicated system was established to us and so on and so. But then I was comforting myself. I was saying, well, wait a second. We got peace after the bloody war, 3 years of war, where more than 100,000 people were killed, where ultimately International Court for former Yugoslavia brought to justice the verdict that it was a genocide in one part of the Bosnia and Herzegovina. I mean, after that war, we got peace. But then I was comforting myself, saying to myself, because a lot of injustice that was there as a result of the war, a lot of destruction, quote, comforting myself by reminding myself of one old saying, peace is not everything, but without peace, nothing is possible. I think that the next step after the peace is economy, because economy is not everything, but without efficient economy, no progress is possible. And ultimately, we come to the word reconciliation. Reconciliation is not everything, but without reconciliation that is based on truth, justice, tolerance, and understanding, there is no progress in any country. And I think that what we are witnessing today, and what we are talking about when we are talking about Boban Kiet, I think he's one of the persons that should be a little bit more shown to the rest of the world, in today's world, in today's divided world. I think history does not recall so many persons who were so great by not forgetting, but what was pain and injustice done to them. But he was forgiving that even to the guilty ones, especially to the people on whose behalf atrocities and human suffering was made. So I think his forgiveness, not forgetting it, is something which is basic precondition for everything moving forward. I think the world should know much more about Boban Kiet, and not only because what he did for Vietnam people, what he did for reconciliation in their country and with the countries that was the supporting actually the war in which he took away from his family, his wife and 2 children that have been killed, as it was already mentioned. But we should learn and try to understand people like Mandela and Boban Kiet. I'm putting them in the same context because in today's changing, confronted, and divisive world, I think we have to constantly and growing struggle in between 2 different worlds to tackle with the legacy of people like we are talking about today, like not only Mandela and people like that, but about people like Boban Kiet, because he came from the country in which he was having a maybe tougher job than Mandela did. And today's world, which is divided in between 2 worlds, world of cooperation and confrontation, world of reconciliation and world of revenge. a world of inclusive and exclusive societies, world in between shared and segregated societies, world in between respect and world of radicalism, a world of tolerance and dialogue versus the world of supremacy and fear, and world of learning and understanding versus a world of ignorance and selfishness. I think the legacy of people that we are talking about today, of course, people like Kiet was, it is very important for all of us. So I think one of his most quoted saying, the motherland come to us, the nation belongs to us, the Vietnam belongs to us, not to communists or any religion, group, or faction, I think is needed today more than ever in today's world. Because I think a lot of nations today need it. My nation, my country, we need that word. Not for Vietnam, but for my country. Just replace the word Bosnia and Herzegovina with Vietnam. That's what we need. Replace the word United States with the word Vietnam. You don't have a problem with communists, I mean, but if you say that the nation belongs to us, the state belongs to us, United States belongs to us, not to any party or any religious faction, it is really very important for it. It is important for my country. My country does not belong to any parties or any ruling or opposition party or any religious group or any factions. We have to go in that direction. But I think, and I will close with it, I will call our attention to one of the most guideline quotes that is pointing out in the core preconditions for understanding pathways for recreation. I quote, when mentioning war, million people feel happy, but another million feel miserable. You replace with Vietnam, you can say for my country. Million, when you're mentioning our Bosnian war, or like he was mentioning Vietnam war, million people feel happy, another million feels miserable. So we have to understand that all of us today in confronted, divided nations, states, world, have to have in mind that ordinary people on winning or losing side are usually, seeing things differently, regardless of the fact that all of them are ultimately bigger or smaller loser, even if they are on the winning side. So I think the feeling of guilt and pride, victory and defeat, have to be filtered through reconciliation, which is based on truth and justice, dialogue and respect, learning and understanding. In Vietnam, in divided or united societies, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in European Union. Today in the European Union, we have to understand that this belongs to all of us. And I think it is one of the most important lessons that I learned from studying about legacy of great Boban Kiet. And so, Tuan, Governor Thomas, I want to thank you for giving me privilege and opportunities to speak about such a great man who, forgive me for my ignorance, I didn't know so much when I was preparing myself for him. I found enormous wealth, enormous spring, lighthouse, for a lot of things that today's world needs. It's a great thing we were talking about past. We were talking about the future yesterday, because today talking about past, we're actually talking about things we have to remind ourselves, to create a better future. Thank you very much, and I really do want to thank you all for these 2 days of great discussions and great people who I was having privilege to listen. So good luck, and let's do something that, based on so smart people like Abe and Boban Kiet, we are really able to remake the world towards an age of global enlightenment. More people like them close to our heart. Thank you.
Zlatko, thank you. And thank you again for your many contributions to the Boston Global Forum. What you speak of in the Balkans is sadly quite true right now of the United States as well. We're a very deeply divided country, and this idea that the country belongs to no faction, I think, is a very powerful idea, particularly at a time when at least one side in our conflict would like to co-opt the country as belonging to them, or at least their definition of the country belonging to them. Our last formal presentation of the 2-day conference will be from Mats Carlson, former vice president of the World Bank. I think your father was mentioned earlier, or your grandfather. Is there a story? Is there a story? There's got to be a story to that too. So, Mats, please.